Hi friends, this is Angelica. Thanks for joining me here on the Greetery YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be introducing you to a few new products from the new Wild Elegance collection, and then we're going to put together some cards. Let's start with a quick look at the products and then we'll jump right into the projects. This is the new Arches Sentiment stamp set. This large stamp set has 6 different arches and 5 large words. Each arch has a different sentiment to match the large words. There is an included guide to help you put the sentiments together, and the coordinating die set die cuts the large words. Next is the Floral Arches stamp and stencil set. This too comes with a guide to walk you through the stenciling and stamping steps, and there is a coordinating Floral Arches die set. We're going to start with the stencils. I have an A2 size card panel taped to my work area, and I'm going to tape down the first stencil in this 6-piece set. There is an A2 size rectangle on all of the stencils to help line the stencils up to your card panel, and each stencil has a number in the left top corner to help keep them in order. The first 3 stencils are for the foliage, and I picked 3 different green colors from the Stamp Market ink collection. I started with sage for the first layer, then fern for the second layer, and the third green is matcha. I used Tailored Expressions Raspberry Sorbet on the 4th stencil, which is the large flowers, and the Stamp Market Rusty ink for the 5th stencil. This stencil adds small flowers around the arch, and you can really see the arch coming together. The last numbered stencil adds little buds around the arrangement, and I used a blush pink for that stencil. There's also an arch stencil and mask included in this set, and I used my detail scissors to snip the mask apart. I taped that stencil down and blended a soft layer of blush pink over it. Because the stencils come with the guidelines, I made 2 more backgrounds, and I'm going to be able to stamp them all in my MISTI with the detail stamps. I used the guide to help me line up the upper and lower stems, and then I stamped them with Tailored Expressions Mocha ink. Those branches really transformed the scene for me. The mocha brown really worked perfectly to highlight the beautiful flowers and leaves, and it just goes up from here. I'm going to stamp the other 2 panels on screen so you can see how easy it is to create several panels at once. For this first panel, I used the Stamp Market inks with the stencils, starting with Leafy, Greenery, Salmon, Sea Glass, and Melon. And then for the purple flowers, I used Pink Fresh Studio inks. I started with brown, so the foliage was Doe, Gather Twigs, and Warm Buff. And the flowers is I used Candy Violet, and then Apricot, and blush pink for the last 2 layers. Now we're going to move on to the flower detail stamps. I'm going to start with the petal details first, and I picked mulled wine to stamp over, that was raspberry sorbet. So mulled wine, and oh, I just love how pretty these flowers just start turning when you're adding the detail stamps. The next stamps that I'm picking up are the detail stamps for the smaller flowers, and I'm using Rusty ink on those. And the last detail stamp is for the flower centers, and I'm using Pink Fresh Studio Marigold ink for all 3 panels. Now I'm going to use the Floral Arches die. I snipped the large die and arch off, and I'm going to die cut the purple flower arrangement. The die was a little hard for me to figure out, so I die cut printer paper with it and used the printer paper to help me line the die up. I got the paper lined up with the arrangement, and then I slid the die over the paper into place. I taped it down and ran it through my die cut machine, and it came out perfectly cut. I used my paper piercer to poke out all the pieces that were die cut, and then use the arch die to die cut the window. And now I have a really pretty frame to use over the arched sentiment that I'm about to stamp. Before I do that though, I'm going to break up the white background a little bit with some more stenciling. I'm going to use the arch stencil again to stencil a little bit of blush pink over the arch, and then I'm going to use the Nitwit stencil to add some color on the outside of the arch. I made sure to cover the blush pink with the mask that I had snipped away, and then I used my brown ink brush to add the ink to the background. I'm bringing in the third panel that I made to show how I used the arch sentiments. I'm going to a wedding next weekend, so I picked the arch that says best wishes to the happy couple in the arch. I lined the stamp up first in the window of the card front, and then I stamped it onto the Misty Grid to make sure it was straight. It was straight, so I stamped it onto the panel. I stamped arched sentiments onto the other panels, and then I got the arch sentiment die set out and die cut white cardstock with it. I put the panel into my Misty and I stamped a couple large words to match the arch sentiments that I used. And for the wedding card, I stamped the large sentiment right onto the card front. Since I'd stamped the arch onto the Misty Grid, I was able to stamp that first to make sure I'd lined the words up correctly, and after I checked it out, it was straight. I then stamped the panel. My last step was getting the card fronts attached to card bases. The wedding card went directly onto a base. The purple frame got a little bit of dimension with thin foam squares, and I used glue to attach the words. And that's going to finish the cards for today. You can find more details on these products over on the Greetery blog and details on the rest of the Wild Elegance collection. I want to thank you again for joining me, and I want to thank the Greetery for inviting me to introduce these products to you. That's all that I have for now. Take care.